The CIA's secret mind control program you weren't supposed to know about. Grainy black and white photo of a 1950s New York City hotel. Slow zoom in on a lit window at night. On a cold November night in 1953, a man crashed through the window of a New York hotel room and fell 10 stories to his death. His name was Frank Olson. He was a father of 3, a chemist, a quiet man who worked for the U.S. government. The police called it suicide. The government called it a tragic accident. Both stories were lies. Because 9 days before he hit the pavement, Frank Olson was secretly dosed with LSD by his own colleagues as part of a classified CIA program that should only exist in horror movies. A program that would drug prisoners, patients, sex workers' clients, even its own employees, without their consent. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the documented story of the CIA's real attempt at mind control. And the worst part? They destroyed most of the evidence before anyone could stop them. If stories like this keep you up at night, you're not alone. Here, we dig up the parts of history that were never supposed to see daylight. Programs buried in archives, redacted under black ink, and dismissed for years as paranoia. Before we open the file on MKUltra, a quick warning. This episode contains references to drugging, psychological torture, and abuse in medical settings. I'll avoid graphic details, but the reality is disturbing. If you want more dark, true stories like this, you can subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. It helps more than you think, and lets me keep telling the stories powerful people tried to erase. Now, let's go back to the beginning, before the LSD, before the secret safe houses, to the fear that started it all. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, the United States was terrified of something new. Not just the Soviet Union, but the idea that the human mind itself could be hacked. During the Korean War, captured American prisoners of war appeared on camera denouncing the United States, confessing to crimes, praising communism. Newspapers screamed about brainwashing. In reality, some of this was classic coercion, sleep deprivation, threats, beatings. But inside the brand new CIA, something darker took root. What if our enemies have a secret method to control people? And if they did, could the US afford to have one too? The CIA had already begun quietly importing Nazi and Japanese scientists after World War II under programs like Operation Paperclip. Some of those scientists had experimented on prisoners in concentration camps and occupied territories. The ethics were already rotten. In this anxious atmosphere, the CIA launched a series of projects. Find ways to crack open a person's mind. Could drugs, hypnosis, and psychological torture erase memories? Force confessions? Make someone do something against their will? By 1953, these scattered efforts were rolled into one master program with a new code name. At the top of this web sat a soft-spoken chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. He didn't look like a movie villain. He raised goats. He meditated. He talked about living simply. By day, he wore a modest suit and carried a briefcase. Inside that briefcase were the tools for one of the most disturbing experiments the U.S. government has ever run on its own people. Gottlieb became obsessed with a new substance. In the early 1950s, LSD was almost unknown, used only in small medical trials. It was powerful, unpredictable, and mind-altering. To Gottlieb, it was a potential. If you could slip LSD into someone's drink without them knowing, could you? Break their grip on reality? Make them talk? Make them suggestible? The CIA began buying up the world's supply of LSD. Literally, they tested it on volunteers at first, often prisoners and soldiers who were told they were helping research. But there weren't enough volunteers. Soon, MKUltra crossed a line it would never come back from. A bar in the 1950s, a man with a drink, a hospital corridor, a prison block. Imagine this. You go to a bar after work in San Francisco. A woman smiles at you. You have a drink, then another. The room feels strange. Your thoughts begin to melt. Colors smear. Hours vanish. You wake up in a small apartment room you've never seen, with a pounding headache and no memory of the night before. On the other side of a hidden two-way mirror, government agents watch and take notes. That scenario actually happened. It was called Operation Midnight Climax. The CIA set up secret safe houses in cities like San Francisco and New York. They hired sex workers to bring men there. The men were given LSD without consent. Behind the scenes, an agent named George Hunter White, a flamboyant narcotics officer, watched everything, drank heavily, and reported to Gottlieb. Recreation of a 1950s apartment with a hidden mirror, notes being written. But the experiments didn't stop at safe houses. MKUltra funneled money through front organizations into universities, prisons, and hospitals. Doctors were paid to run experiments on. Why dosed? Olson went through that hotel window. Street outside the hotel at night. Police chalk outline. The official report. Suicide. 20 years later, thanks to declassified documents, Olson's family learned he had been an unwitting subject of an MKUltra experiment. Later investigations and exhumations raised even more questions. Was he pushed? Did he know too much? Did someone decide he was a liability? We still don't have all the answers. Because while the Olson case leaked into the light, most of MKUltra remained locked away until the CIA made a very deliberate decision. They tried to burn the evidence. A stack of papers being fed into a shredder or burned in a bin. In 1973, the CIA was in trouble. The Vietnam War was going badly. The Watergate scandal was expanding. Public trust was crumbling. Amid this chaos, CIA Director Richard Helms gave a quiet order. Destroy the MKUltra files. Thousands of documents were shredded. The agency wanted MKUltra to disappear, not just from the headlines, but from history itself. They almost succeeded, but not quite. By accident, a few boxes of financial records and copies survived in a forgotten archive. And when the U.S. Senate formed the Church Committee in the mid-1970s to investigate intelligence abuses, those stray documents surfaced. Footage or stills of 1970 Senate hearings, microphones, witnesses being sworn in. What followed was a shocking revelation. In public hearings, officials admitted SS that could never happen again. But that's the comforting version. Here's the harder truth. MKUltra shows what can happen when fear overrides ethics, secrecy overrides accountability, and powerful institutions convince themselves that the ends justify any means. People like Sidney Gottlieb didn't wake up in the morning thinking, I'm the villain of a horror story. They told themselves they were defending their country, that a few broken minds were a reasonable price to pay to protect millions. They were wrong. But history is full of people who hurt others deeply while believing they were on the right side. The real horror of MKUltra isn't LSD or hypnosis or bizarre experiments. It's that in a democracy built on individual rights, the government was willing to secretly turn its own citizens into lab rats and then try to erase the evidence. If MKUltra hadn't slipped through the cracks of its own cover-up, we might still be calling all of this a myth. Instead, we have just enough documents to know that the truth was worse than the rumors. Somewhere in shredded files and lost memories are the full stories we'll never be able to tell. If you stayed with me this far, thank you. If you want more real stories that sound like nightmares but come straight from the archive, you can subscribe and turn on notifications. It tells me to keep going deeper into the dark corners of history. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think programs like this are really gone? Or did they just change their name and move into the shadows? Tell me in the comments. I read as many as I can, and your questions often become the next episode.